Hello. Hi, welcome everyone. We are going to be talking about today that what is the chemistry that you create in a coaching session. Though a lot has been really said about, what a coach has to do in a coaching session, how to help the client to be moving towards a solution, and also to follow the coaching competencies to create an awareness in the client and many more things. But nothing has been really much said that what do we really do in the first coaching conversation, in a complimentary session, in an introductory session to get to know each other session. A coach in general, when you're coaching, it is about listening carefully. It's also about asking a powerful question and also resisting to impose your own solutions on the client and also raising the client's awareness to their own solutions. In the first conversation as well, the coach is actually to bring out all these elements in the conversation and making the client to trust yourself, to trust the coach, so that the client is also able to explore that potential what we're talking of. So, hi friends, I'm Siri Guru Prakash Kaur Khalsa, Siri for short, and with me is Satpuram Singh Khalsa. So, welcome everyone. We are both MCC coaches. Together, we are the co-founders for and directors for the Innermost Shift Coaching. And so we have trained almost about more than 500 coaches. They are ICF, ACC, PCC, and on the path to BMCC. And our model, when we talk about innermost shift coaching model, is actually an amalgamation of the ICF core competencies, of the NLP techniques in its pure form, yoga somatic science, brain science, and neuroscience, a model which has really evolved over so many years of our experience with a lot of research, with a lot of our learnings which has happened in the process, and obviously our commitment to give the best to our participants. So, sir, let me ask you this question, what do you think, what makes the first coaching conversation a topic which is really worth about it? So what is it? If you can speak something about that.
Well, thank you, Siri, for bringing this audience for and this question. And I think everyone looks for this answer. Of course, I would start with the one very positive note that don't fear. First impression is not the last impression when it comes to taking a good chemistry session, because it is about striking your chemistry. It's about coming at the same wavelength, and it's about understanding. So many times things will work out and you will end up signing a client, but either ways you will end up giving a great value to the client. So do not think that the first coaching session or a pre-coaching session or a chemistry coaching session, or I may call it a wavelength aligning session, it can be many names you can give it. So the first of all, the importance of the name that you give is to be kept in mind, and then it must communicate its whole purpose. And the real purpose of this first coaching session is that let a person experience and you also experience the person. So what makes it important is that the way you communicate, it's going to be kind of an undisclosed coaching session. So rather than telling that I will coach you, which a client will not understand, it's about giving client an experience, because people walk in for, oh, let me understand what is it. So they have no idea that what you're going to do. So first of all, determine its length. So the length of it is also important. So people must know that you are giving a how much time to it. So people come prepared. And what makes it very, very important, it is going to tell everything about what coaching is, what's so different about coaching, and what's so different about you as a person who is present before the person. And when a person is present before you, what difference it makes. And it begins with giving that person a trigger, choosing to understand a value that you can offer, and then at the end person must feel, oh my god, let me invite this person in my life. And it comes for a value, and it comes for a price, and it must communicate everything about your process, your way of being, and understand everything about the person, and then end up with the if a person asks you, hey, how much do I need to pay you for this value that I can get for it? So it must communicate logistics, fee, and everything. So that's what the whole importance it carries. So it carries whole sort of message condensed in a package that a person undergoes an experience. So summing it up, it's an experience you're offering. A person can't deny it. All right. Um, so when it comes to experience, so let me bring to the audience some your insight. That when it comes to an experience and you have to be totally present and give your presence to the client. Let me ask you, Siri, for the knowledge of audience, that what's more important? People often talk a rapport. Okay, let's let's make a good relationship with a person or your presence. So, what's more important? Is it presence important or rapport important or both important? And what is it? If you can give people some
No,
insight about it.
let me just start with when we talk about chemistry. I remember going to my, of course, school, of course, college. I did not have science, but in school I had science. So when you would have these chemistry sessions and when you would go to a lab, they would have different chemicals, and when you're putting them and mixing them together, it creates another chemical. So when we are
Mm,
talking of the first chemistry session, it's about creating an amalgamation of your skills as a coach and
mm,
understanding about the client so that a beautiful, purpose driven transformation happens to the client. So for me, chemistry in the first session is about creating that understanding. And as you are asking me a question, that is it rapport important or your presence important? I think coach, when we are training our coaches, and as a coach, according to me, I will say we must, and underlining the word must, we must be in our presence. And I would not say it's not about just a coaching session, but I think if we remain in our presence all the time, we can create a better life outside. But let's focus on this session at the moment. So it's about you being in your presence. That is the first thing, which is very imperative, and I would say which is the most important kind of a foundation for a coach. And then obviously when you're meeting with the person, so when the person has come for a coaching session, that means the person has already been into that open space to come to you, that the person wants to talk to you and looking forward for a solution. So then creating that rapport is could be the next step, or other I can say it's not exactly the next step, but it's kind of simultaneous. So you're in your own presence and you're also creating that rapport with the client. And rapport to me means, when you are becoming like one with the people. So what I have learned in so many years of my experience and with the NLP into it, that people always like who are like you. So how you become like the other person when you meet the person, how you are there in your presence and making yourself available. And when the client is coming for the first time, it's as if the client is meeting oneself. The client is not meeting somebody else, but the client is meeting oneself, like as the client is looking in the mirror. So obviously that is an art, and that's, of course, we learn through the steps. But then certain things we have been doing in our life with certain people, like friends, like family, or somebody whom you like for the first time, so you already have that kind of rapport built in. So I think both are very equally important and they go hand in hand. So we cannot leave the one and go for the other one. So that's what I feel. And I think it's also more about what do you call that? Just being with the person. So I think that makes a lot of sense when you're there with the person and just being in your own presence. So that's I hope this answered the question.
okay. Um, So,
Yeah. So should I
so
ask you
is
one
there?
question?
Sure, sure.
Okay. What do you think that when you're doing the first coaching session, should it be an impromptu session or should there be some kind of a structure to the session? So what do you think a coach should do when you're doing the first session itself?
All right. Now, I think that in this world, nothing is without a structure. If the structure collapses, the world will collapse. So everything is held by something that is solid backing it. Even if water has a structure, has some element and quite organized elements. So the water is the most flexible source in the world and most flexible element in the world. and it itself crystallizes into many forms. It becomes steam, it becomes water, solid ice. It's just a water itself. It evaporates into clouds. But either way, it has a structure behind it. So how can we undermine the importance of not giving a good structure to something, right? So I believe that even impromptu must look like that it's serving a definite purpose. So when there's a definiteness behind it, then there has to be something that I want to offer in a very organized manner, right? So it must have a very, very skillful, assimilated presentation, which must flow to the client in a form and in a way the client likes it. Okay. And the client must appreciate that I have really got a value for this time spent with this coach. And coach has been a very different person, and I can sense the presence. And remember, the see, I'll pick up the word from you that
Mm.
the presence in rapport, and I would put here like that in the entire structure, the your presence is felt long after you're gone off the scene.
Mhm.
So when you leave your client or prospective client must sense that something has dawned in, something has flown into my life, and a lot of reflection I'm left with, right? So I believe that it has to have a very good structure, and all these elements must be kept very organized. And I will again end up with the answer with the same thing that at the end, with all that you transferred, you can even ask the client, okay, put it under this note that I am up, but I am speaking to you. And client must have the points to consider later on and certain reflections to give on even, right? And I will just share something that what
Mhm.
happened that just recently a client walked in to our office, and what we was there that we had different size of cups, different color of cups, and it was by chance like that that none of the five six cups lying over the table
Mhm.
were identical. And now you might not appreciate or and might not look into something that you can do impromptu, but it's a very organized man. And I just asked a a question out of nowhere that what do you find common in all these cups? And they were all different cups that way. And suddenly the client began to ponder and reflect over and then said, well, they're all cup on the table. And I think all the cups have coffee. And that's where I asked the person, so what's different about this cups? Now, client didn't know it's a chemistry striking session. It's a wavelength aligning session. It's a deep insight gaining session. It's a deep presence creating session. And I have to create the presence of the client as well in those moments. And client could experience as if I'm winning because I said, wow, that's great.
Mhm.
You could what's common, what's same, you could look at different. And what do you think how life is? And what can you look and how the organization is present in the disorganization and how the disorganization is present in the organization. And the client began to think, yeah, and laugh and understand. So the rapport is already building up. Your presence is also building up. The client's presence is also showing up. Client is also, you know, finding it good to share what client's in, and client is not knowing it even that how comfortably you have made the client to speak the deep insight the client has it. Okay. Now, to know it, it was a way to actually give a good, thinking patterns that in mind. So if a coach is not a vacuum, coach is a hollow. coach has to have good structure in the mind and build a good artistry around it. Okay, and that's where it's not your presence and rapport, it is the client's presence also must show up, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So it is very
And
organized and structured.
I think also, when we talk about structure, what is coming to my mind is that whenever I'm doing sessions with the client for the first time, there's kind of a it's kind of a hidden structure. Normally, it's not something which is outward, but I think few things which you need to keep in mind is that one, you have to be, obviously coaching presence is an essential part of it. You have to be in a frame of mind of listening and not hearing when we talk about it. I think then also one of the structure it follows is that you have to ask the kind of questions which will open up the client and not kind of ask a closed questions, and also remain aware of your own expressions, because the moment you create an expression of a judgment, it's going to affect the client right sitting in front of you. So you have to be very aware in terms of, in your mind, not to think and interpret any experience when the client is sharing with you. I think that's a very essential part of the first session, because people come with a lot of baggage, people come with a lot of their own issues of life. And somewhere, if we have an experience, or somewhere you've already coached somebody and something is already kind of happening in your mind, then you have to become with that zero state of mind, so that you're not even showing that judgment on your face, though it's all hidden as a part of the, we don't say 1 2 3 as a structure, but then I think there are some of the things which you need to do. And then obviously remaining very open, and also asking an open question every time you're talking to the client, so that client is able to really kind of pour their heart out and talk everything to you. So that's what is coming to my mind when you talk of the structure. So it's there, and so that you can get the full information from the client when the client comes to you for the first time.
Okay, see, so let me put a question here. Just for the interest of audience, as we all always ask questions to each other, and I like that. Um, what's most important, or more important, I would say, is it listening to the client more important than keep listening, 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 or is it that making a client trust their own potential? So, what has to be kept more in mind, or both in mind? Um,
I think,
in
yeah,
a,
I think it has to be both the ways when we are talking of listening, and when you're talking of creating a trust. For me, it's like creating a trust in the whole trust is in the environment. So when you are there and when you're listening and listening intently, there's a difference between hearing and listening. So one is you're just hearing the information and just kind of letting it go. But one is listening means being with the client as one, creating that whole space where you're creating an environment of trust that yes, I'm available, and whatever you're going to talk to me is going to be absolutely with me, and then you can actually talk everything about yourself, what you're doing. So the one thing which comes into play here is that becoming like the person we always like, the people who are like us. So once you do that, it automatically starts to create an environment of trust. And listening is just not being there. Listening is not just being okay, stiff, just okay, I'm just listening, that's not it. So in between, using certain phrases, yes, or maybe writing some points, okay, yeah, and then repeating the points in between sometimes. Okay, so if I've understood that what you have said is this. Okay, so now what else is there, what you want to talk about it? So I think it's both the ways, because if you're not creating an environment of trust, client will not speak. And also, in the process of the first session, when you're talking of the chemistry session or the introductory session, what you call as, somewhere also in between, I would not say that when the client is speaking, you talk about the client has the potential, but then I think the client does have the potential. But then when you're listening, that's the moment you're just listening and being there present fully with the client. So I think both are equally important.
yes, and what about that? In this session itself, very first session itself, um, how important it is, and how do you do that, making the client trust that they have the potential, they have the capability. Like, what my question is that many people fear that if I will, in my chemistry session itself, let a
Hmm.
client know that it is they and their potential and they will solve everything, then the client might say, why do I need you? Okay,
Absolutely. Yeah,
and
I understand
then
that.
Hmm,
Yeah, actually, it's very right, because as a coach, what coaching is all about empowerment, helping the people to understand. So I think it's the way you interpret and the way you talk to a client. You can always talk to the client saying that yes, it's about you, and people know the solution. At least in my experience, when I've been talking to them, people understand that they have a solution, but it's only they are not able to implement it. So probably maybe giving them little, citing some examples of, like how a person has a potential. So even like, for example, somebody who's playing a sports, they have a full potential to become sportsmen. Everybody can become to the tune of being to Sachin Tendulkar who's in cricket, but do they really become? So they have the potential, but when you get a coach is somebody who's who's got like a hammer and a chisel. So he's always kind of putting a small hammer and chiseling you and getting that whole creativity out of you, so that you're able to understand that this potential has always been there, but you've been really not been able to implement. Obviously not saying it directly to the people, but then yes, this does exist, but since we are fogged up with our problems, we are not able to implement those solutions. The job of a coach is to unlayer, unfog, give that clarity, help that person to get that whole clarity and a clear vision that what has to be done and implemented, right? So I think it's very imperative and very important that you instill that empowerment in the client, that yes, you will do everything. I'm going to be there on your side. As we always say, coaching is a partnering process. So I'm going to partner you to unlayer all the experiences which are holding you back and you're not able to go forward with it, right? Okay.
So just adding to that, and because we are talking about what it means is that by helping the client to understand that they have the potential, in fact, you are helping them to discover or create their focus on what they want and a clarity. So if you look at the structure, then it's about first turning their focus on what do they want in life and what do they want to discard in life, and what is the how is the ordinary people think, how is the people who trust their own potential think, right? And how you can dig the foundation of this thought process that they have the power to connect to something bigger, better in their life, and it is
Hmm.
not that they were wasting their life, and it is not that you are a person who are doing something on them. It is
Hmm.
something that you're working with them. So likewise, you have a good structure here, and that's how you use this good structure to help them trust their own potential. And then even even in this process of connecting them to their own potential, you can use number of organized tools in a very structured manner. That how do I solve a problem of this nature? How do I
Hmm.
solve a problem of this nature? And what do I do in this kind of circumstances? So even as a coach, you use a very organized way, very structured process, even later on. So in the first session itself, the client must start appreciating that everything will you do will be in a very organized, very systematic manners, and it is going to be very self-generative process, and I will understand, I will discover those things. So you use it all in a very, very systematic manner, and you communicate to them in your very first session. So the client say, wow, I mean, I like it. The way you will go with me. Okay. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what do you think, sir? Like this, we are talking about the client and opening up. So how does a coach, like how a coach should show up in the first session? What do you think about that? What do you have to say?
Well, show
Because
up is
it's
a
all
very
about
dicey word.
okay, it's like okay, one is showing up obviously when you're, of course, I'm not talking about the outer image, but I'm talking about in general the mindset of a coach when you're there for the first time. And what should you keep in your mind as a coach when you're with a client for the first time? What you should
Okay.
take care, what you should not to be done when you're in the first session. So some light if you can throw
Okay.
on that.
I'll just narrate you a very profound incident that happened uh, when the very first time. Yeah, I think you will remember that we were in a coffee shop, and I think people would relate much. It's very profound case story I share with people for education purpose. Why do I call it case story? Is that the exact word may not be those words, but I have woven a good story around, but I have used most of the words quite really. That me and Steve were having a coffee long back. It's about 18, 19 years back, and I heard a kind of a noise between two friends fighting with each other. And the one was, not fighting, they were actually mourning over and shouting over what the hell. And in a typical Punjabi form, that this business is a hell, this life is a hell. And though we never talk to anybody in coffee shop, we just go for simply enjoying coffee. And I just overheard it. And then I turned to that person while I was getting up and I said, that I heard you talking a lot about that business is hell, life is hell. And, you know, uh, I can help you to enjoy peace and profit in your business. And he started looking at me, and in a
Hmm.
typical Punjabi form, he said, those who understand Punjabi, "Oi, ऐसे हो ही नहीं सकता." Like it's not possible that profit and peace do not go hand in hand. And then he said that the peace get taken away by my wife and
Hmm.
profits get taken away by my competition. So I said, what are you left with then? And he started looking at me and he said, this all what is happening. I said, that's exactly where I think I can help you to get more. And now look at the structure here, that I have quickly got a big value that person want to have. Okay. And person is wanting to have but cannot have. So want to have and cannot have and can be turned into I can, it has a price to have and I can pay to have. And I will get this value which I need. And that's where a good chemistry originated. So chemistry is about changing the chemicals of brain and mind. So when people get into a very powerful chemistry, they become unstoppable in that chemistry. Those who understand neuroscience or otherwise too, like people get drugged with alcohol, can't stop, you know, being alcoholic. So if you drug the people's mind with a something a big value and they get intoxicated full of that intoxication and peace and profit, the immediately brought a good mixture of cocktail in his mind. Okay. And he said, then what do I have to do? I said, now remember a while ago I said that you have to use this session for bringing the clarity and a focus and a purpose in mind. And he said, for this, you have to give two focused hours with no distraction, and that too not over a cup of coffee. Okay, it has to be in a very very safe and undistracted environment, and possibly either your office, and I'm sorry, I don't have that good office, and I very honestly stated that. Okay, and next day we were there in his office. So you know that it answers a question that you asked, that what is to be done and how this is to be done, right? And what is the way the things will happen. So it must show up like that. Though I have totally lost your questions.
Yeah,
Sorry, Siri.
yeah, I can understand. It was about how a coach should show up. So I think one of the things
So
what you
coach should
mentioned
show
is,
up like this. I am demonstrating that to you only honest. If you
yeah.
do
So I
not
think
know, you
that's
do
one
not
of the
know.
traits.
So it is not I
Mm,
had lost your question. But what I am saying is that do not try to hide and show up things. Be vulnerable. Okay, you are not the perfect man on the planet, you are not the god on this planet, you are not knowing everything, so do not try to show, pretend, right, cover up.
yeah, I think
Do
that's
things
one of the traits.
as they are. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So this is how I should not say show must go on, that person must feel up in the life, and
Mm,
you should not try to be up. Okay, that is the way you must show up.
yeah, yeah.
That's my
I think there's
answer.
a No, I appreciate that. I think I'm going to just add to it a little bit. Just we have Preeti Somani asking that you mean allowing a process of guided discovery She says, just facilitate gently, not imposing our agenda, listening where we are reflecting back to acknowledge what the client is going through. Yes, rapport building. And also, she says, I think the first session could be a process to identify the client's pain points and not jump to the solutions. Yeah, that's very, very correctly said, Preeti. In the first session, as we are talking about, it's about generating a chemistry. So when you are in a chemistry session, you are actually building up the wavelength with the client so that you are at the same level, you're the same pedestal, and you do not show up as being a coach, I know everything. You don't show all that. It's more about client listening to the person, and as I earlier mentioned, it's not about your interpretations in the mind. When somebody gives their peace of mind, somebody talks about their issues, you are there just being there and not creating a judgment in your mind, or not coming with, oh, I know the solution. Because it happens to the new coaches. When you are a new coach and you're getting the first client, your brain works like that. You cannot escape it because of the experiences of life. So as a new coach, or as a coach otherwise, when you're going, it's all about just being and becoming that good listener. And good listener with that curiosity, I always say that to people. When you're curious, you are listening more intently, and the other person feels you're along with the client. So definitely it's about more of exploration. So just to add, what you said, sir, how should a coach show up? So I think also, according to me, when I'm talking about how should a coach show up, it's also about, you know, keeping in mind as a coach that what is the kind of various methodologies that you will use, what is the kind of various tools that you will use, because that's an intrinsic part of your first session. When you're telling, after listening to the client everything, then you also tell the client first about that, what is the difference between coaching, counseling, mentoring, and training. So you do express so that you make the client aware that what you will do is you will be going to work along with the client, as coaching is a partnering process, and you'll not be a counselor, you'll not be a trainer, you'll not be a guide, you'll not be a mentor in the process. And also talking about the various methodologies that you will use in the session, so coach should be prepared for it. And also understanding and making the client, the first step is also making the client aware that what we have understood is your where you are today. And then also keeping in mind that when the client talks about now, where you will help the client to go in the next few sessions to come. And as we talk about transformation, so it's not, the first session is not about just creating a transformation, but first session definitely is about a first step of the ladder to move the person towards the transformation process. So you do keep in mind all that what you will do with the client, and keep that whole transformational process in your mind, so that at the end of the session, when you have listened fully and the client has totally emptied their whole mind and bucket, that's the time you express to the person that what all you will do and what all you have in your kitty, and how you'll be able to help the person to be more empowered after each session, and how we are going to calibrate the whole action plan so that the people are able to measure it themselves. So that's what was just coming to my mind, that normally when I keep everything in mind, and before we end the session, even the first part of the session, we do talk about everything to the client. So just to add to that, right?
Okay, so there is a question popping up here, Sri. Let me
Yeah.
address this question, and
Hmm.
it's about that. What is the ideal way of, having this coaching session, first coaching session, the chemistry coaching session? Well, my answer to this is the ideal way is that what are you there to offer? What is client there to take or can take, and aligning that, how much of that you can give. You cannot give maybe everything, but what all you can offer and for definitely do for the client, those are what is the this is what you have to keep in mind and align that a after listening to the person completely, I would say divide this session into this, that if you have 2 hours session, know the client more, let the client speak about, use very very good pauses. So ideal session is that let the client speak, you listen, and listen to everything. And like for a while ago, she demonstrated that listening could be, even to the whole expression, to the physiology, to the gestures of the person, to the emphasis of the person, and then picking up from those areas which even you're listening more than the client is listening, and you are giving very very good pleasant surprises that how could you listen that. And after listening a lot, you can ask the client. Now the ideal way is that, well, all this is there waiting to happen, so what have you been waiting for to happen that you did not ever try to solve it, or what are the ways you try to solve it? And then listening to the client again and bringing to the client to a point that despite client's best efforts put in so far, client must come with the thoughts and thinking, I need help. And
Mhm.
I have taken a decision to take help. And then another important point is I am giving myself a permission. The client must give himself or herself a permission to, share what client needs and seek from himself or herself. Now that's the good ideal way, and then it has a price attached to it. And I am willing to pay the price, as I shared a while ago. So this is
Mhm.
an ideal coaching session is about listening, assimilating, relating what I have to offer, and making a client sense the importance of that and willing to pay the energy, time, money. It is not for free to have that, right? And then giving himself a permission to begin it and begin it now, right? If not now, when? Has to be a, you know, hanging or a reflecting question in the mind, right? And as a good ideal coaching session ends up with that, well, I appreciate that it has a price to it, and yes, I am willing to have it, and then I'll now decide to have it, give a permission to have it, and I want to have it. And you ask, okay, so when do we get started? Now. Okay, so that's a good ideal coaching session,
Mm.
right? So is there any more question popping up, Siri, or should I put a question for the interest of audience?
No, I think let me just ask you this one more question, which is coming up. That many time coaches talk about making the client comfortable, right? And at the same time, when we are doing coaching sessions, we've also found that it serves the client only when you're curious. So I was talking about curiosity, but when we talk about an actual, we say, okay, the client has to be more comfortable. So what do you have to say, that in terms of making the client comfortable and you remaining curious, but still prompting the client to talk about it. So how does that help? That if you make the client too comfortable, then client will not talk. Client will only talk good things. But the client is here for to share the problem and to, take out all the garbage from the mind what the people have, right? But then, so how do you do that? How do you make the client also comfortable and also you remain and create that curiosity so that the client just, shares everything? So what do you have to say about that?
See, things happen when we stop trying. When we don't try to make the client feel comfortable, the client will start feeling comfortable. Have you seen ever that is the guest walks in and you ask, would you have this? Would you have this? Would you have this? Would you have this? So you're trying to
Un-
make the client comfortable and client is feeling
uncom-
too uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable, absolutely.
Okay. And then even you sometimes, I don't know about many, but if I walk to a showroom and there are a variety of things, there is a miss uncomfortable there. She's present. Shall I help you, sir? Now, shall I help you? Assumes that I can't help myself, and unconsciously we retaliate back, and we don't
Mhm.
notice it. So there are a presupposition in every expressions, right? So when we say, let me make you comfortable, that means client is not comfortable. Now,
Mhm.
when you stop trying, things happen. What it means is that, well, coaching is not about remaining comfortable, but coaching is about, you know, facing the uncomfortable and settling to be comfortable. And it means that how do you make a client feel that I have the options to fail? I have the options to share. I have failed many times. I have
Mhm.
the option to share that I might fail again. And I want someone who will not make me feel insulted. But also at the same time, you will not make the client feel complacent. So your curiosity, your inquiries, your reflection must cause a sense of discomfort to the client. But discomfort, I want to share, this discomfort is like a, you know, even in the chemistry coaching session, you become a cocoon
Mm,
under which some organically person is evolving and showing up, all that client. So you're creating a hard shell around the client, and like cocoon is feeling uncomfortable, want to break it out, okay, and want to
correct.
transform
Yeah.
into, yeah.
Mm,
So you and the client, you create a cocoon of the client's hard shell around it. So
mm,
you make the client experience those limitations as the chances to feel the heat of discomfort and begin to evolve. And I will be that person who will hold that cocoon, okay,
mm,
the shell of your limitations around you for you to evolve. And naturally, it can't happen today in this
mm,
session. So I will every moment be there with you, with my reflections given to you, with my methodology of workbooks given to you. In between this session, engagement process I will use with you. During the session, process
mm,
I will use you. So before the session, during the session, end of the session, after the session, in between the sessions, how will I hold you in this cocoon of transformation, and you will receive these values. So naturally, when today Siri, you tell me, oh my God, so that is what I have been missing in my life. I can't at the moment then be all very comfortable with myself. So I might feel emotional, I might feel whatever. But your curiosity is not aimed at to only make me feel comfortable. And many people I have seen, they want to chemistry means you're sharing a cup of coffee or a wine. I mean, don't do that. This is not the chemistry striking coaching session that you try to change the chemistry of pouring in wine or coffee. Okay. So give the person the chemistry of understanding that how I will hold a space around you. In this space, you will, evolve. So this is what I
mm.
mean.
And I think also, what we can do is, especially when you are talking, and you very rightly said, it's not just about making the client comfortable. Yes, creating an environment of being comfortable where one can speak, but also somewhere giving an insight that certain presumptions will be challenged while you are being coached. And that could also be done using certain metaphors. It could be also done using certain, your own life experiences or your coaching, which you have already done. And if somebody is like a new coach, then probably you can use some kind of metaphors in your own way so that client feels it's okay that I had this solution but I was not able to get, I had worked out on this solution but I was not able to get the desired result. So it's okay, at times when you're working and you're not able to get the desired result, and that's why the coach is there who can help you to really, come out of that stuck situation and see things from a different perspective. Because when you are telling the client that you will not be judged and you will be in a space where you can talk anything and you're absolutely safe, I think people also start accepting that it's okay if I'm not getting the result what I'm getting, I'm supposed to get or haven't got it. And this is another way probably is going to come out, and how I will, work on that way along with the coach. So I think that's also equally important when you are talking about, creating that whole space of comfort and still being curious and still making them a little uncomfortable. Look, this is not work, shaking them up. You've done it enough. So let's see another way. And also giving that insight to the person. Right.
All right. So somebody is asking me a question here that there are people who are in a deep slumber and they are cocooned under their hard shell of negativity or insecurities. They may not like to share with you anything in first 2 hours, and then is 2 hours enough, or should we have multiple? Should we have multiple um,
Session.
chemistry session? Well, I believe that it is that this is what I said. You must know a good organized structure. For example, in our motion coaching model, we we train our people that how to how to have a very good session with a even a decision maker to introduce everything what coaching is not, and we say okay, people can be in the problem frame of mind and they need to move in the solution or transformation change of mind frame of mind, so they are not.
Mhm.
Now it is a very simple chemistry creating session that if you meet even a senior leader who has to decide the coaching and you just ask, is there some small decision that is waiting to be taken or very doable task that is just pending with you? You have not to share with me. And you just simply reflect on it as I asked you a few questions, right? And then you, in a very organized way, you move the person's, we call it a, Prozac session. So step by step, you move the person from a problem state of mind into a very solution and action frame of mind. At the end, just in 15 minutes or sometime in 6 or 7 minutes, and then tell, has it helped you to move a little closer to the decision that you were keeping pending? And people say, yeah, it has. So, sir, if just in 5 minutes this has made you closer to or you feel like taking action, this is how the coaching happens, wherein you and your abilities interact with each other and we simply contract with you with this confidentiality, honor, and respect that you are far more capable and powerful, and it's only a simply a matter of reorganizing things in your mind. So notice in how many minutes you can conduct a very powerful chemistry creating session, and a decision maker can think about um, even giving an assignment to you, right? So it just this what it doesn't take hours and session by session. It means you are in recession somewhere. If you are very, or then you're working on a client that, oh no, no, I want this client at any cost, at any cost, at any cost, and you're taking multiple chemistry building sessions. I think personal
And I think
chemistry
it's
need to be
also
organized.
absolutely. I think it's somewhere if the client has walked to you for the first time and you're not able to create that environment that people have not opened up, so you can work on your coaching presence, more. But still, you have done enough, you have built a rapport, and still the client is not able to open up, then I think probably we have to let go. In a simple term, then the client is not ready to be coached, and obviously you cannot do anything about it. But if the client has walked to you and the client is open, believe it, the more you work on your presence, the more you build, create a rapport with your client, people do open up. I have not seen in my experience in life in so many years, I think, except one when we're doing a coaching session for one of the 12 leaders, and one of the leaders didn't open up because he said, he all the time said, no, it's not about me, it's about the organization. The management has a problem. I'm perfect. And he was one of the best technical persons available in the organization, which the chairman did not want to lose. So, and when we walked to him saying that, look, this is a person who's not opening up, even you have tried everything. But then I remember first I took a session, then you went and took a session, sir. And then
Yeah, yeah,
he went back and said, sir, we cannot do it. He says, and Siri, we have called you for this reason because this person needs to be coached. Everybody is doing so well. So then I think you used one of the perfect strategies, and we changed the whole setup of building that chemistry of not talking about the organizational context, but suddenly you move to the family context. I think that was one of the best moves you did, and understood the whole strategy part of it. And that's how that gentleman opened, and he created a shift in his relationship with his young daughter, and the whole thing shifted in the organization as well. So when you're doing a
okay,
coaching session, I think even in the chemistry building session, it's important that you help the client to explore every facet of life. So if you are using the right words, that okay, we are here to explore, and maybe whatever problems you face in your personal, professional, family, spiritual, social, any context, this table, this place today is there for you to share anything. So, and sometimes I do tell people, I said, it's okay if you're not joining, if you're not taking in very little, I say with a little voice, okay, if you think it's not the right coach, but then whatever we share here with the guaranteed and honest and integrity, that nothing will be shared outside this place of whatever you share with us, with us. And believe it, if you give such a strong word with a conviction, and you remain centered in yourself, people do talk about it. But the underline is, if they're not talking about it, then say, okay, thank you so much for being here, and I think we can look for somebody else. That's the only thing what you can do then. If people still
Okay,
don't
so
show up.
is there is a question here? What is a must in a good chemistry uh, session? I'll just answer this question. Answer this question, and let me pick up some threads for serious. Just open up that that the client she's talking about. At the end, we said, "Wow." So right now, it's quite clear that you need a very good expert in your life and a good consultant in your life. If that be your goal, and today you're saying, I don't need to interact with you because I don't think that I can come with solutions. So what about, you know, offering and tendering this request to the management that you need an expert and a consultant in life? And he was kind of thinking. So what it means is that at the end of the very first chemistry session, even it was very clear and evident that he doesn't need a coach, but he needs an consultant, an expert. And we explained to him. And then we had set a goal for him that how he'll go for a good consultant or an expert in his life, and how would management even provide him that space. So no coaching session goes waste if you are simply not looking for that I want to sign up a client. So that was a big value for the client in that example Siri has shared with you. Now, what should be ideal in a coaching session in a chemistry? First of all, it must have a very clear set of values that you can actually offer after completely listening to the client and matching what you have to offer. So explain the difference between what's the difference between different intervention, like how coaching differentiate from counseling, mentoring, training, consulting, advising. So it must be explained very clear to the client, and then client pick up the card that how coaching is different. And then next must is that what ways you will offer your model will offer even different then the client can get from anywhere in the market. And then what are some of the specific set of values? What will be your clear coaching path if you go ahead with me? Okay, how long you can take, what all values you can transfer, maybe in a 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, depending upon the seeking and absorbing state of the client. Then who will be you responsible for and not responsible for if the other stakeholders are involved, like if the client is being introduced by the HR, like in this case it was being introduced by the chairman. So what can you expect from me, what you can't expect from if we sign up? So all that has to happen. Then what kind of time commitments will be required from you? What will be your responsibility as a result of his sign up? Okay, what will be my responsibility? So all this has to go in a very organized manner. And the very first question you must know is that what have you so far understood about? What has made you walk to me and talk to me today? And wherein I fit in your requirement? And then
And also,
alignment. Yeah,
and
first
also
go
not
ahead.
forgetting, when you're doing when you're putting the whole chemistry or the first coaching session, then also telling the client that that how many sessions will you do, what are the kind of follow-up sessions we have, how will you help the client to track the goals, and every session will be 100% confidence, with their maintaining all whole confidentiality of the session will be there. And also, not the least, but which has to be told, that what is the fees you're going to charge. So don't forget that in your whole chemistry session, while you're listening to the person and you're not telling the person, maybe you don't tell that time. So normally what we would do, and how we train our coaches as inner shift coaches, is when you're listening to the client, do not tell the fees right away in the end. Once you have understood the whole problem, you can tell them, okay, I'm going to come back tomorrow or day after, I'm going to draft the whole mail and put the sessions in place, how many sessions, how many months the whole contract is going to be, and I'm going to tell the fees and share the fees along with that. So ideal is that you do that, don't jump into the session, but then yes, do keep in mind and make the client aware that this is a chargeable, it will be chargeable, the fees will be there,
Okay.
but let me
Yeah.
plan the whole thing, and I'll get back to you
Then
on that.
another most thing is about you. That what do you know about, where are you trained from? How much experience do you have it? how have you helped some of the clients, your
Yeah, the
testimonials,
introduction, what
that
you have
also
to, as
matters.
you're talking about, yes, the introduction about your own self. That right? Yes, sir. You can talk about that. That's very
Okay.
important
And
aspect.
then the another must is, if you can wait for this, that a very must thing is that client must ask you, well, how
Hmm.
much would I need to pay for it? So don't offer your price, create the conditions and the environment that client asks you. Now, when client asks you, that means client has taken a decision. Only permission is awaited. But sometimes people take permission from their wives even or spouses. And sometimes permission could be from their HR heads. And sometimes a permission could be from themselves. So then you ask, okay, as you know, you have already taken a decision and you ask the price, and who has to give you permission for it when it is most important for you. So it has a very hidden, powerful phrase into it. When it is very important for you, then who has to give you a permission for it, right? So that's a very, very vital point in all this. I think there are many questions there, but I think time is now over. It's just 1 minute left. Is there anything important, Siri, you think that we have left in? You can ask me, or I think we can
No,
take a
no, we
permission
can.
from people to, or some other question is waiting.
I think we've talked about just to consolidate everything when we are talking about, very quickly when we are talking of chemistry of a session. So we need to keep very clear that even when you're doing the first session, it has to be very much focused. So you are focusing on the client's information, and you're also helping the client to understand that the purpose of the whole session and coaching today is that we are that you are listening to the client. That has to be in your mind, but it has to be with the purpose that okay, the client is here and what kind of value you're going to offer to the client. And in the whole process, how much clarity you're building in the client's mind, that also how many issues the client is having in the different aspects of life, and this also brings a lot of clarity to the person along with it. And then also making it more clear that what you will do, of course, while listening and everything is happening, what you are going to be doing with the client, what is coaching, mentoring, as sir is already talking about, that what you will do with the person, how will you partner in the whole process, and also helping the client to understand that there are certain things, maybe not in the first session, but sometimes clients is talking too varied and you're jotting down all the points, and if something gets missed out and if it's not worth it, then some way to direct the client and tell them, okay, these are all the essential points we are talking of. And also becoming and building that kind of whole rapport, building that whole kind of space that when people open up, one is creating a trust, one is creating the environment of trust. So what I focus on, you will become trustworthy only when you're creating an environment of trust, and when you do that, the client automatically starts trusting you. And also one thing very important which sir mentioned is that that of course what is the value that you're going to deliver, and also telling the clients it's okay to fail. If you have not been able to achieve it, it's okay, it has happened now, but now something's going to be new and something more, something you're going to put more seeds in the ground which will help you to cultivate your mind and create a difference in your life which you're looking forward to do it,
Our
maintaining your values of honesty, not being judgmental, being present, being in your own presence, and also kind of displaying that every moment, and also making the client aware that how the client is unique, and how the coaching approach is a very unique approach in your context, and how, especially when we're talking of innermost shift coaching, how our coaches and how what we train people on, how to create a difference of connecting people to their true being, that when something comes up they know it from within that yes, this is right for me and I'm at the right place. And also is setting the right expectation, because I remember sometime when you're doing a strategy session or a chemistry session, people say, no, I'm looking for an answer. I remember one of the client walking in, no, Siri, I want you to tell me that you tell me everything what has to be done. I said, I'm not here for that. That is a part of consulting, and I can do consulting, but right now we are talking about coaching. So if you feel that we're not putting everything into this session, and maybe we go as we go forward and you sign up, and if you need consulting, we are very open to do that part also. Right now it's more about listening to you. So defining your boundaries, and telling that what is happening in that boundary, what you gave an example of a cocoon which has a hard shell and the caterpillar is inside. So building all that boundaries and staying in the boundaries, yet making it lot of giving them a lot of clarity about what you will do and what will you make the client in the end feel and what the client will achieve by the end of these sessions when we are going to be talking about, maybe 6 sessions or 9 sessions or whatever the contract that you're signing up.
So the time is
So
now up, and let's stop here. And at the end, build a very good chemistry, intoxicate the client with the potentiality, possibilities, and opportunities. Shall we say bye bye now?
yes, yes. Thank you
Okay,
so much,
so bye
everyone,
bye
for
to
joining
lovely
us, and
audience.
see
Thank you for
you
with us.
next
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.